Hello, this is Dread, and in today's video topic, we're going to be hopping back into Merchant's Guild to talk about Stygian Coal Warlock. So I accidentally forgot about playing this build about 2 months ago. That's because a Path of Exile League happened right after I finished it, so I didn't have the chance to make a video for this build, but now that's what we're doing today. If you don't know, Stygian Coal is a unique that was added this patch. It's an offhand that acolytes can use that allow you to turn your drain life into a laser light show. This has very good synergy with the node that allows you to place drain life on the ground, as you can have multiple drain lives at once, and it's a lot of laser shooting, like da 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 da. It's great. It's very fun. This build actually surprised me heavily in terms of the amount of damage, the clear, and survivability it had. Just overall, just 5 stars every single metric that you could possibly think of for this build. It does take a little bit of investment, but I think it's definitely well worth it for a build like this. It has allowed me to farm a lot of my favor recently when I do hop over to Merchant's Guild every so often when I'm not working on solo character found stuff, and it's definitely one of the builds that I would recommend for farming a bunch of favor very quickly. Now, if you haven't already, I would heavily suggest leaving a like on the video and subscribing to the channel, as that is the best way of currently supporting me and work like this on YouTube, and it shows me that you want more videos like this on YouTube. Now, with all that being said, let's talk about this build more in detail, shall we? So, Stygian Coal Warlock. So the Lich version, there is a Lich version of this. It does significantly more damage than this, I think, if I'm not mistaken. It does a very large amount of damage, especially if you go for the glass cannon route. But the biggest problem with the Lich version is the clear, because, you know, even with a bunch of lasers, if you have a pack of spiders, it's really hard to actually clear that pack of spiders quick enough for it to matter, right? Which sounds weird, and that ends up being a problem with a lot of different enemies, of course, when they're all jumbled up on each other. And recently, last Epoch has increased the amount of enemies that are in endgame, like the mob density. So having good clear in endgame is very important now, especially since, you know, favor per hour matters about it. So we're sacrificing a little bit of single target versus the laser lich version so that we can get much better clear. Yes, this build has significantly better clear than the lich version. Why is that? Well, that's because we have a few secret techniques that Lich does not have access to, like for instance, Mark of the Rat inside Profane Veil. If you don't know, this node allows you to spread damned and poison around on enemies whenever you apply Mark for Death, or when you're inside Profane Veil. So that combined allows you to spread all of your ailments. So this is a necrotic, damned, and poison setup, so we're scaling both damned and poison. Thankfully, a lot of our damage is generic percent damage, allowing us to scale both ailments at the same time to get a very large chunk of damage in the end game. Now we can spread these around with Mark of the Rat. Now we have to apply a Mark for Death to, you know, spread it, which is fine because we have access to these pair of gloves. These gloves are really bad up until, you know, you introduce Mark of the Rat. Turns out when you're able to just spread things with a 40% chance on hit, your clear goes through the roof. You'll see sometimes things will tick up to like 30k before they die. That's how many spreads that we get so quickly. If you have a bunch of enemies, like it'll spread it like multiple times and kill multiple enemies at once. That allows us to actually clear significantly faster than the other version that is Lich, right? And this is only for Warlock because, of course, it's inside Profane Veil. This combination of the unique gloves and the skill Profane Veil allows us to essentially just clear things very quickly. And this makes it so that we can leverage the insane amount of damage that Stygian Coal provides onto more targets much quicker. Now, of course, like I said, this has less damage in the Laser Lich version, but it's completely fine as our clear is significantly faster because now we can just literally just run through the zone as we just watch things die. It's very entertaining, and it's very good for favor per hour, at least from what I found. Just being able to just run through monos and stuff like that. Now, one thing that we have to do, though, to make this kind of build function, of course, the Lich version has this problem too, is you deal more damage based on the flat mana that you have and the current mana. So you want to be staying at very high amounts of mana constantly. And to do that, there's a few tricks. The one way that we're doing it is with Transplant. We're spamming Transplant for 30 mana. We're also utilizing Wandering Spirits with the one node that allows us to gain mana whenever a spirit disappears. This gives us an average of like a decent average of mana every single time we press it, as it keeps us topped up. That on top of the mana regen that we do have, all of that combined means that we can actually spend our mana on these 60 mana drain lives and actually make them function. Now you can run out of mana if you're too crazy with the button, but I found that if you just, you know, use a drain life here or there, not spam the button, you actually end up with better clear and better mana, because you end up having more damage because you end up having more current mana. And of course, because of our clear, thanks to Mark of the Rat and the gloves, it means that we don't have to have as many lasers as other versions of this build need to, because we just need to like shoot a few times and all of a sudden everything on the screen is dead. Very entertaining, very entertaining. Now for defenses on this setup, we actually utilize Vessel of Strife. That's my fan favorite. Just get a bunch of ward per second from our health regen, right? Get like, or I think around like 1200 ward per second from it. And we also actually are stacking decay threshold as well, a small amount of it from the Warlock tree, and that gives us a decent amount of ward from that as well. All that combined leads to us having like 7k-ish ward standing still, like 7 to 8k depending on what's happening and what's going on. But in combat, it's a little bit less lower than that. Of course, we're always taking damage, but we have a decent amount of ward per second. And one of the strengths of this build is the fact that I don't need to be standing still to deal damage. I can actually be on the move constantly. I just have to stutter step every so often to place down my drain life, but I can stay mobile, which is very strong. Other things that this build does. No, that's about covers it. Yeah, that's the defenses. So with all that being said, let's go in game and talk about the build more in detail, shall we? All right, so here we are in game with the character. It's a level 100 Warlock, of course. We are in Merchant's Guild, so all of this gear is Merchant gearable. So just, you know, keep that in mind as we talk about this. Now, you could make a very cheapo version as long as you have the Mortality's Grasp in Merchant's Guild or in COF if you go for the HP version. I just went for the fancy Vessel of Strife version, but if you scale HP, scale healing effectiveness, and then scale this node here, Absence of Life, I'm sure you'll do just fine in terms of the life version. And of course, you could also scale Leech to the Absolute Moon. Now, let's talk about the build, shall we? So, skills, let's talk about Drain Life here. Remember, we are using Stygian Coal. It is affecting us. It is allowing us to build this as kind of a completely different like skill in general, right? Let's talk about it. So we take 4 points in Power Drain for the more damage. This will apply to, of course, the Laser Liches. 3 points travel into Ravenous. 2 points travel into Insatiable. 1 point into Dark Shackles. This allows you to put it on the floor like you saw. And we also grab extra duration that will actually add extra duration to them. So we go to 5 seconds instead of 3 seconds, and it's definitely worth the mana cost. This minus channel cost does actually reduce the flat mana cost from this, which is cool, which is great. Then we also grab the 1 pointer here for the 40% more damage, of course. 4 points travel and condemnation, although I think this works for it. I think this it's such a weird thing because I think it's bugged and it might be applying less stacks than it should be. I'm not entirely sure. I know it works, but it like works halfway weirdly, or like it only applies 2 of these stacks or something like that. I can't necessarily remember because I did this like a few months ago. And of course here we get the more damage per stack of damned. This is very strong. This allows us to, you know, make our poisons and our dams deal significantly more damage. And that's pretty much it for Drain Life. The next skill that's more important is Profane Veil. Take 2 points here to get the minus mana cost, which is great. 2 points travel here, and then 1 point travel into Grave Circle. We apply Mark for Death on us, but that's fine, and on enemies as well. 5 points into Mark of the Rat. As you can see, this is a global modifier. It says if you apply Mark for Death by any method, so as long as you have Profane Veil Spect, this will affect any skill as long as you apply Mark for Death. It's like 5 spreads. You know, damned spreads with Mark on Death, poison spreads with Mark on Death. That's why we're a damned and a poison build on this setup, by the way. 3 points in Eternal Blasphemy will make Profane Veil to last longer, which is important. We do grab the extra curse on Penitent target, so we get the more percent damage against curses. 1 point travel into Discourage, then 5 points into Scorn. This is really good as you get 50% more damage to cursed enemies while inside Profane Veil. So part of the combo on our single target is we place down a few Profane Veils like this, and then we go into Profane Veil after. I'm sorry. You place a few Drain Lives, and you go into Profane Veil to deal significantly more damage. You could scale cooldown to make this have more uptime. I just wasn't able to with my current gear, but you can scale cooldown and get more uptime on this, which would mean you do more damage. You could also make this into a traversal skill as well, although it would reduce the duration. So like there's a few other ways you can go about this, but this is the way that I went about it. But yeah, Profane Veil not only gives you all your clear, it also gives you a significant portion of single target damage. And that's pretty much it for Profane Veil. Aura of Decay, very simply, all we care about is Respite. The 200% health regen on Deactivate allows us to get to 1400 health regen, which is then turned into ward per second thanks to Vessel of Strife, so that's cool. So that's all we care about on Aura of Decay. We do also actually get negative resistance and all that, but that's not a big deal. Not a big deal at all. Transplant here, just for the haste, mainly. The haste, the coal, the extra curse with here, and also the missing mana restored as well. Cooldown recovery speed, the bone armor stuff, and that's pretty much it for Transplant. Very simple. Wandering Spirits, this is the utility setup that allows us to gain a bunch of mana based on the amount of souls that we reveal. With Wandering Spirits, we grab all the reveal rate and stuff like that. We also grab Spectral Putrescence, which allows us to apply poisons to enemies, to cooldown recovery speed, so we cool it down faster. This would also scale with cooldown recovery speed, by the way, but like essentially we want to get as much mana efficiency, spam as many spirits as possible to get as much mana back as possible, because we want to gain a bunch of mana with it, which is the whole goal of utilizing the skill. Now, that's pretty much it for skills. Let's talk about passives that are important. There's nothing too crazy on this setup, just mainly ward retention, because we're playing a ward setup. Getting this extra poison duration is big damage. Getting as much intelligence as possible. Just so you know, this is additive reduced health regen, so it's like 40% less. So it's like it's not like 40% less overall, but like 40% minus from my percent health regen, so it's not a big deal. A lot of intelligence. We love intelligence on this setup, because not only do we get a bunch of mana thanks to this, we get a bunch of mana, we also get the ward retention, the percent damage. Essentially, intelligence stacking is very good on this build. We also get the damned on necrotic skill hits, which is what we have, a necrotic skill. Cultist Mind for the mana, of course, getting the Vile Tide for the Poison Overload, which allows us to actually get up to negative 500%. I don't think I'm at negative 400%. I don't think I'm at the max yet, but with more poison chance, you could easily get there. We also grab Doom Herald. Less damage taken while channeling doesn't really matter because we're in Profane Veil, although it does make us take less dot damage while channeling. But the more damage to damned while channeling, that will affect us and also give us such a giga juiced amount of damage, thanks to Scorn as well. So channeling both of those allows us to channeling that allows us to get both of the benefits and deal a lot more damage. Wither here for 8% less damage taken. Just trying to get as much intelligence as possible. Damn chance, of course. Damned overload. Deal more damage to enemies, more health they're missing. We're not actually going low life, so we don't benefit from the other half, but it doesn't matter. And of course, damn duration, make dams last longer to deal more damn damage, of course. Eventually, like some haste on kill, so we can go faster. And that's pretty much it. You don't really need the cast speed. You don't need the percent health. You don't need this flat spell damage against curse. So you don't need any of these top things. Mainly, Lich for extra stuff. And that's pretty much it for the passives that are important. Let's talk about blessings real quick that are a little bit more important with this build. Resistance, that allows us to build more health regen. So getting Void Res here, I have a 74% because I've been farming Black Sun this entire time. Ending the Storm for health regen. Health regen's really strong with Vessel of Strife, of course. Very, very strong one. I went for all resistance. The reason why I went for all resistance is because I'm using a Fiery Dragon Shoes, which gives me the reduced bonus damage taken from crits, which means, of course, I have this opened up. You could get Poison Chance, but when I was playing this, the Poison Chance blessing was bugged, but now that it's fixed, you could probably go into poison chance here and get a significant amount of damage, which you should be doing. And of course, armor and then armor to make ourselves tankier. I should probably eventually go get the armor on this, but I've been lazy. But yeah, that's pretty much it for blessings. Let's talk about gearing. Like I said, mandatory items, Stygian Coal. Without this, the build wouldn't work, obviously, because, you know, yada, yada, yada. You can play any other, you know, Warlock build up until this point. Doesn't really matter what you play until you can put on the Stygian Coal. Although you might have to wait a little bit because like at level 36, you're not going to have like a drain life setup. So maybe wait a little bit longer. And of course, Mortality's Grasp is very important for this build, getting the mark for death chance on necrotic spells. These count as necrotic spells, so you the little hits from the Stygian Coal count as necrotic spells. As you can see, this means that of course we can apply the mark for death on enemies, and then of course spread it thanks to Mark the Rat. These are pretty, these drop with LP all the time, so it's great to like utilize these with like health regen or whatever you need at the time. Other items that aren't mandatory, but I would suggest having, double Ferrobores. Ferrobores gives a very large amount of health regen in general. It's very, very, very good. Just in general, lots of health regen per ring. And thing with the Ferrobores persistence over here. Both Ferrobores also gives a lot of intelligence, which not only gives us mana, gives us ward retention, gives us damage, like overall Ferrobores, and also armor as well. Ferrobores are just really strong. I am running an Astral's Fury for the flat health regen for my for my Vessel of Strife. Not many people use this, so it's actually easy to get one right now. Now, of course, one thing to note, you do have to unbind your potion, because if you don't, Azrael's Fury will start, if you use a potion, it will start consuming your mana. You don't want to do that. You'd rather not do that. Like, seriously, like you really don't want to do that, so don't do that. Yeah. Of course, Vessel of Strife for the defensive setup, but like I said, you could go HP and be just fine, I think, as well. It depends. So Vessel of Strife as well. Then let's talk about the rest of the gear. For helmet, mana, of course, regen on the mana and mana regen base. Eventually you'd want damned on hit on the prefix of that helmet. Amulet here, mana regen, mana, health regen, resistance, pretty good base. Weapon here, this is very strong. Not only do you get the mana and mana regen prefix, you also get damage over time, get the poison on hit. This is where a lot of your poison on hit comes from, so this is very important to get a Chitin Dagger specifically. Chest here, health regen, armor, damned on hit, plus levels of drain life. The base is pretty good. Could have a better one, but I like this base. Of course, Stygian Coal here with like mana. Getting flat mana on your Stygian Coal is pretty strong. As like you can see, you get 3% more damage per 10 current mana. We're actually getting 180% more damage from it, and also as well 100% increased Stygian Beam frequency as well, because from our intelligence. Very good. And that's pretty much it. Idols just increase damage while ailment overload and poison chance on hit. Not only do you get the poison chance, but also this scales your overload, like your percent damage while overloaded. And of course, just some cooldown and recovery speed with transplant and some poison on hits. Eventually, you could try to get more cooldown recovery speed for transplant, but these adorned idols are so strong. I don't know why you wouldn't go with these, right? Very, very strong. And that's pretty much it for the character this time. That's pretty much it for the build. With all that being said, this has been Dread. I have to go do something else. Bye.